Hi,
Hello.
everybody. Hi, and welcome to Crossroads of Cognizance. Um, we're very happy you joined us today. I'm Katrina Rasbold, and I own Crossroads Metaphysical Store in Shingle Springs, California.
And I am Dahlia Rose. I own Crystal Cognizance in Woodbridge, Virginia on the East Coast.
So between us, what our job is to let you know what's happening on the East Coast, what's happening on the West Coast, and hopefully all of you can let us know what's happening in the sandwich in between. And we do see some common threads most of the time when we are comparing notes, which we do right before the show because we want to be able to give the week every opportunity to develop in every way it's going to develop. And one of the themes that I'm seeing and that Dahlia is seeing too is not uncommon in what we do, but of course, there is an amping up of it right now. And that's the ways that we process trauma. And both of us, in different ways, in some of the same ways, take care of clients who are suffering traumas. Sometimes we are able to identify to clients that they're responding to traumas that they haven't even thought of in a while that didn't get fully processed. And so there are lots of ways to manage trauma, and we always think of our traumas as being our enemies, our traumas as being something that we have to overcome, and we've got to get through this as soon as possible. But one of the themes that Dahlia pointed out that I'd like for her to work on a little bit and unpack with us before I go into my part is how can trauma be our friend?
It sounds like such a strange concept, being friends with your trauma. I know there's a meme circulating on Facebook that talks basically the images of a person sitting next to one of their traumas, one of their demons, and they're like, sipping tea and they're friends. But one of the themes that I'd come across in working with my clients this week was the notion of having to get rid of, and I found myself in these conversations talking about how trauma can harm your intuition. So that is to say, I'm sure most of us can recall times when we were in a situation. One example in particular, when we were in a situation where, um, you know, in order to move through the situation safely, without harm, we had to be able to read the situation. We had to be able to understand what was happening in a multifaceted way. And some of us might call that instinct or flashes of insight, but this is in exact harmony with what intuition does. I know for myself, with that being the case, being picked on in other situations, it is something that now informs my intuition, not from a place of harm. There was a time in my life where it was a burden wanting to know, who was going to harm me, and is this person out to get me, and not really wanting to put myself into the world to be changed and transformed by it. But I was safe in my little cocoon of understanding. But then, I'm not going to say there was some magical moment, but a series of realizations where it was like, as I'm learning, this is intuition. And it doesn't have to mean removing myself from every situation, but this can guide my experience. If I'm feeling from a person that's oppressing me, if I'm feeling pain, I don't have to dive into my own pain. I can dive into my empathy. I can, and it takes a lot sometimes. I mean, that is not, again, is not an automatic response, but it's not to learn. And so, in navigating and partnering with your trauma, you have an opportunity to use your intuition to connect. You have an opportunity for your trauma to basically become like a spirit guide, instead of an oppressive being that haunts you and tells you repeatedly that this situation is going to happen again and again and again. And oh, watch out for this and that and the third. You can find strength. So that's sort of my synopsis on being friends with your trauma. There's so much more to be said, but I wonder what your thoughts are, Katrina.
You know, when we look at a block of marble, it has beauty in its simplicity and in its absolute perfect state as it is. But when we get an artist in there chipping away at it to create a statue that's going to last for thousands of years and inspire people and cause people to feel a certain way and to create something else that's really beautiful, or to take that beauty up to the next level, to emphasize the variations of color and the way the light hits it, and all the things you have to consider for artistic masterpiece in sculpting, you have to destroy that block.
Oh,
You have to
absolutely.
chip at it and break it and hurt it. And that's trauma for that brick, that marble that is becoming that statue. And so often in life, we are not perfected, or we are not given the opportunity to become more than what we can be without trauma. Trauma is what shapes and forms us. And without trauma, we don't change, we don't move, we don't do anything because everything's okay. We don't want to shift. And to encourage us to shift, trauma is part of what has to happen. And if we look at any time basically before the time we have all been alive, at any previous time in history, there were warriors. And there are warriors now, but they're of a different type. But warriors on the battlefield, swinging a sword or whatever type of combat they happen to be in, have to assess the situation. They got to read the room. And so that intuition was something, even if it was just that we have to know when to run from the mastodon, or whatever it is we're chasing. We have to read that in order to stay alive. And we've become very protected in our modern society, our modern lives. And so that intuition has kind of worn down. So these moments of trauma that can wake up that intuition, that can say, the herd's at risk, or you're at risk and you need to do this, this, and this, and that allow us to tap into those authentic, intuitive roots that we have in us. And that when we can let that trauma unfold in a graceful way and shape us, that is a rare opportunity. You know, it's not something that comes along all the time, thankfully. There are some people who live in crisis, and we
Yeah.
all know those people who just go from one crisis to another to another. Why does the Lord hate me? Why does all of this misfortune befall me? And it's because they thrive in it. They're excited, they're stimulated by it. In times of peace, they're bored. They, live in the emergency rooms because they live in a constant state of emergency. And so I'm babbling a lot to say that crisis is a part of life, trauma is a part of life, and that intuition is sacred in regard to it. And it's an opportunity to create and allow ourselves to become more and to step up. They
Absolutely.
say that our response to trauma is what defines us, not what
Mm,
happened to us. How did you respond? How graceful did you accept it? How did you allow it? How did you relax into it and allow it to form you? What did you fight back? What did you change? How did you become instrumental in that? And all of those are things that are so vital to how we process that trauma. One more thing before I go completely off the nut on that is when we are looking at the eggs, we see very large opaque bubbles in
mhm.
the egg that signify trauma you're working on right now that you haven't fully processed, that still informs how you engage the world, your
Absolutely.
worldview. How are you reacting to other people? What triggers do you have that you're responding to? And then we see white marks on the egg, the yolk, that are like scars. And
Hmm.
those are your battle wounds. Those are the ones that say, I had this trauma and I made it part of the beauty that I am. And I'm not processing it anymore because it has been resolved. And so we get all sizes of trauma bubbles, big ones, little ones, limp ones, robust ones. But it's very rare for somebody to have no trauma bubbles.
Right. Because, like you said, it's just a part of life. It's just something to expect, to anticipate. And I think that um, one of the falsities of our community, one thing that's promoted really heavily is that you might reach some point where these things don't occur. And, trauma is trauma is trauma. There's no comparison for small to large. And it's, again, it's the response, it's the stress, it's how much did it impact you. The trauma may have been large impact, but small in its influence on you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then vice versa, or, all of the above. But in the midst of dealing with trauma and letting your intuition open up and flow through, there's a lot of opportunity to see, to um, learn how to see things in yourself and recognize them in other people. I mean, that's essentially what reading is, right? So in trauma, you get a chance to see yourself fully so that you can approach others fully
Mm-hmm.
as well. You're not going to have these instances where you're like, "Oh, well, I'm sure that person wouldn't do that," because it's hard to see in yourself why anybody would do that.
Mm-hmm.
When you're traumatized and you have a similar response to that person, it's like, oh, okay, well, I understand. Um, and so with this, it expands your intuition. And I know, Katrina, you were mentioning how your classes have been expanded because of everything that's going on. Could you speak a little to that?
I want to make it neat and tidy and to believe that it's because of everything that's going on. I really don't know why it's happening.
Okay.
Um, the healing classes that I teach are something very important to me. It's a really intimate thing where I'm opening up my practice and I'm saying, this is what I do. This is how I can teach it to you. It's going to take a really long time. You're going to need a really huge commitment to do this. And I never believed anybody would ever sign on for that kind of journey.
Mm.
And so I put them out there. Dahlia, how long ago was it? Was it
Was it
May or
March?
something? March? Was it March? That sounds right. I put it out there early in the year, and we had this huge flood of people sign up, and I thought, oh, this won't last because usually, attrition will kick out at least half of a class, and they didn't go away. A lot of them are still moving into the Master Healing series, and so I never thought to take out another class because I thought
Mhm.
I'm working with these guys; they're perfect. I love them. I will never duplicate this dynamic. This is too precious. I'm just going to let this be what happens. And I had somebody come to me and say, I'd really like to take your healing class. Can you start another one? And I said, well, no, I can't do that. I need at least 6 people, just offhandedly. I need at least 6 people. I'm not going to do it without 6 people. And she came back the next day and she goes, okay, I got 6 people. What do you want to do? And so then I'm questioning her more like, yeah, but I need 6 good people. I need 6 people I like. And she goes, well, look at the names. And they're all people that would be wonderful healers. And so out of the blue, I'm starting a new healing class that I never expected to start. And I just threw it out there on Facebook. I didn't put it on the website. I didn't make a big deal. I just tossed it on Facebook, and all of a sudden, 13 people have signed up for this class.
Nice.
And they're all good. They're all amazing candidates. And there was only 1 or 2 people that I was like, no, I don't think you're at that place right now. And so I was really surprised at the number of people that are stepping up right now with nothing more than the ambition of healing other people and helping
Mm.
other people. And we've been in such a self evaluative, self protective mode really since COVID hit that externalizing beyond us, beyond our household and our little bubble felt it felt rare and weird to me
Mm.
because we're still healing. We're all still having this trauma of COVID that's happening. And no
Right.
matter what your involvement with it is, it's a trauma. If
Absolutely.
you don't believe it's real, you have the trauma of, oh, they're going to make me wear a mask. If you believe that you're in danger, there's a trauma. If you've had it, there's a trauma. There's so much trauma going on regarding it that I didn't expect to see so many people externalizing to the care of others. And man, they just stepped it right up. And it really gave me a renewed faith. And something I don't say very often, so of course I'm going to say it in public. uh, is the last 2 years, and I would even go so far as to say the last 5 years, have really shaken my Pollyanna worldview. I've always been one of these people that believed that people are inherently good, that people are inherently smart, and that sometimes we just aren't using our smart self, or we say something and we regret it, but that overall humanity is in a good place. We're all going to be in the Federation of Planets in no time. And then things happened. I won't go into the things because you
Right,
were
we all
all
lived it.
there. It caused me to believe that humans are just dicks and that people are not inherently good, that people are inherently basically shitbags. And I didn't love that realization. I didn't love the hatred and the anger I was seeing spewed all over social media. I didn't love angry people walking in my shop. I didn't love this feeling of being mean to each other and cruel to each other. And I felt like I couldn't unsee that. It almost felt like there was this huge divide between the people who get it and this huge mass of people who are just running into each other, basically.
Yeah.
And that made me so sad. And so seeing this uprising of people who just want to help other people selflessly really gave me something I needed.
That's beautiful. And I know in the beginning parts of my journey, I was seeing like a similar shift. Um, I couldn't really speak to it because I was part of and it was one of the other things that's interesting to me when these folks kind of step up together is the different backgrounds they're coming from,
Oh, yeah.
and how leaving such an amazing class like yours, where they pollinate or cross pollinate those fields. I mean, I can recall back when I first started working for, not working for, but working alongside a person who was writing speeches for a governor. And I was like, what are you doing here? Like you, you, you are in a different world. And, you know, and then coming to the reality importance of those various backgrounds and the opportunity to work in service of others, and how much that impacts us healing ourselves too. You know, it's one of the things that I love about your class is the consistent promotion of take care of yourself. If you are not in a good place, do not do the session. You know, not many
Mhm.
teachers will tell you that, will promote that. They will, in fact, tell you that, you know, you signed up for this and you are a leader in 24/7 service, and, you know, deal with your health issues and your muggle problems and focus on the light ahead. And unfortunately, that is harmful, in my opinion. Harmful for you as a practitioner, and then harmful for the person you're practicing on. I mean, that's like flowing energy through, I don't know, a Flint, Michigan pipe. You know, you're gonna get sick. Somebody's gonna get sick. You know, not to create such a crude and harsh image, but it can be that bad. I've had clients come to me saying, you know, yeah, this person was well intended, but I feel like I with something stuck to me from them. And you know, it's not a shameful thing, it's not a judgment thing, but awareness is key. And so the fact that all these people want to step up and become aware is such a beautiful thing, I think.
I agree. And you know, the way I think about it is if I went in to see a doctor and they're wearing a mask and they're, you know, in their lab coat and looking official, but they've got lesions all over their face and they're coughing up a lung, I'm not comfortable having that doctor examine me. And so, I mean, really, if a doctor comes to work that day and says, I'm really drunk, I'm really hungover, and I'm gonna just, I'm gonna blow a line of a rail of coke, and I'm just gonna treat this person anyway. That's not the doctor I'm wanting to see. And so we want someone who's energetically healthy, working on our energy. And another thing to say in regard to your energy workers, pay attention. Watch your energy workers. If they are giving you evidence that their life is falling apart, or you see that they can't maintain any positive relationships in their lives, or they can't take care of themselves financially, if you're seeing evidence that your energy worker's job or life is just trashed out, that's not the person to be your guide on an energy journey.
Right.
Don't
And
let anyone up in your energy unless their energy is dialed in.
right. And what I love, the phrasing that you used was healthy. We're not, and even if that person is going through something, in the moment that you reach out, again, maybe they're not the person you want to work with consistently, or maybe it's a timing issue.
Right
Maybe,
then, they're not the person. Yeah.
right. So there's so much opportunity. I've had plenty of people sort of make it like, oh, well, it has to be you, and that's never the case. You should, if that person is not available, maybe say because you're only in town for X amount of days or time, and just didn't line up, take the signal. If you're looking at
Mm-hmm.
their life and it doesn't match their words, take the signal, whatever it is. It's about health, like Katrina was saying, health, instead of perfection.
And that's different than wealth.
Mm.
If,
Mm.
we measure a person's health and success often by what kind of car they drive. And that's not what I'm talking about. A person can be energetically healthy and have nothing.
Yeah.
It's all about how are they managing the energy coming into them. And unfortunately, in the pagan community, I'm going to hammer on them a little bit. At least in our Sacramento pagan community, we have a lot of people who are not leading energetically healthy lives, that are promoting themselves as mentors.
With
And
all of
it's
their
not,
attachments.
yeah, you don't have to be perfect to be a mentor. But you have to at least have some kind of hold on life and know what you're doing to effectively guide another person through that minefield. And one thing that always set with me, that a mentor told me once, was magic and spell work and energetic work isn't something you do as a side hustle.
Nope.
It's not a thing that you learn like, oh, how am I ever going to learn this well enough? You don't ever learn it well enough.
No.
It's a way of being, it's your life. So it doesn't matter if you have another full-time job, energetic healing, or magical practice, or whatever it is you're doing to move energy in your life or manipulate energy in your life. That is your life.
Mm-hmm.
The other things you do are secondary.
Absolutely. It's timing doesn't matter. There isn't going to be a perfect moment. And in each moment, Katrina was referencing Mercury retrograde's impact on some of the she has going on, and I know we're all feeling it. And guys, like, hang in there a couple more days. But what a perfect opportunity, rather than succumbing to the disruptions and the annoyance and the frustrations. What a perfect opportunity to develop a new tool set. Your reader or your psychic talked about your gift and ability to um, channel. Well, you're having communication issues. Why not sit in meditation and pull through the answer to those communication issues that you're having? Why not, communicate with another person's higher self to say what you need to say and practice your healing work. Um, or, you have a boss that is oppressive and you're looking for the solution, pull out your cards. Whatever the case is, use life as a laboratory to apply your gifts. I mean, as when I was working as a veterinary receptionist, I did a little bit of veterinary assistance work as well. And I'm saying this on live and on potential replay, they probably didn't know. There were times when I'd Reiki the animals, because animals are so receptive, and I never did so without permission from the animal, but it is simply an offering of love to someone, an animal that has gone through surgery, that is in a painful place, that the only option for them is euthanasia. Here's a little bit of Reiki energy, not to save you, but to offer some peace in a moment
Mhm.
where the animal's stressing out, the owner's stressing out, and there's multiple things coming from multiple directions. Animals don't have the language to communicate to us their needs fully, unless you're an animal communicator. um, but what a great opportunity to practice something that was not full time for me. And I'm offering that to you all as you go out and you do whatever healing work you're doing, whether it's Reiki, whether it's universal healing, whether it is, shish boom ba, whatever it is. If your gift and ability is channeling, naturally communicating with anyone is going to be an opportunity for you to practice. You just have to try. And so life, like I said earlier, is a laboratory. So put on your white coat and see what you can make in each vial.
Dahlia, one of the things that I've heard you say before has really impressed me, and I think this will be a good place to unpack that here. Is what do you say to people when you're talking about, okay, just your reader told you to learn to channel, or that you would be a good channel, you're having trouble communicating, so work on your channeling. What do you say to people who say, oh, I just don't have time? I don't have time to develop those skills. What's your answer to them?
I tell them they're not making time. I'm a little bit coarse when it comes to that. Because I recognize it in myself. I mean, I've said this before. I missed my calling as a lawyer. I could come up with an excuse for anything. So my response is, well, you're not making time, and when it's a priority for you, then you will. Um, I hate to think that it will be some sort of emergency circumstance that you then have to make time, or that you tempt the universe to slow you down. And that sounds so ominous and threatening, but it's the truth. Or if you're not willing, if it's something important to your development, the universe will slow you down. If it's something like, meh, you can learn it or you couldn't, or it's just fun, then you feel bypass it. But if it is something integral to who you are, you're going to learn it one way or another. You might as well make the time. I have consistently over the last couple of weeks have been getting up at 3:30 in the morning because I don't feel like I have time anywhere else. And notice I said I don't feel like I have time anywhere else. I probably do. I catnapped today. That could have been a meditation, but I meditated with my eyes closed. So, um, if they say I don't have time, to me it is a matter of making time. More and more, I'm recognizing productivity issues within myself and within other people, and that's, again, it sounds coarse, but it's not from a place of judgment. I always hear another business strategist talk about how you can't see the label from the inside of the bottle. So then I start asking them. I also don't just say, well, you're not making time, but we ask questions like, okay, well, what does your day look like? And they tell me, and I'm like, well, what makes you think you have to do this all at once? What makes this a higher priority than that? And have you considered? And I kind of go into coach mode, and they're like, wow, I didn't think of it like that. And these things are freely given in those moments, because I also know when they go home, application is different. So, again, I think it's about priorities, and you will make time for what's important to you at the end of the day, whether it is conscious or unconscious. So that's my response to the timing issue. I wonder, I think I think we have a Mercury retrograde moment happening here. As Katrina's screen is frozen. Um, you know, we just went over how timing and developing your gifts, no perfect moment. There is no perfect opportunity for development. So, if there are areas of your life where you feel stressed, then allow yourself to deal with the stress first, then move towards difference. Don't just ease your stress, ease your challenges, and from there, oh, okay, well, I feel calm and relaxed now. I can just sort of, um, you know, feel into this peacefulness. It's easy to get lost in all of that. However, if you make a plan to take that peace and often when burdened with life challenges, stressful moments where we can't see any opportunity, this is learned helplessness. And maybe it's time to bring in a coach. Maybe it's time to bring a friend. Maybe it's time to have um, accountability partners or groups or what have you. I know sometimes money can be an issue, but it doesn't mean that there are zero opportunities. So research can be your best friend. So what stops you? Uh, and again, when it is the most crucial, integral part of who you are, you the time, and that's the end of the story. But there is no sweating or judgment in between. So one of the other things that we were talking about is I know Katrina's trying to address the challenges that she's having with whatever's going on with Mercury. Um, One of the things that also coming up with timing was Katrina had mentioned this feeling of stillness, and if we can get her back in on the broadcast, I'll ask her to speak more to that stillness feeling that's coming in with the darkening of the season, right? So it's darker earlier in the day. We have a lot of opportunity to work through our shadows at this time, which a lot of people are experiencing through everyday life. But not just that, seasonal affect is a huge there's a huge wave of that occurs in the wintertime because we get less sunlight. And so as we move through the darker parts of the year, and we're going through these shadows and processes and things like that, and we're on the tail end of a Mercury retrograde, which is usually when the energy ramps up just to finally give that final push of what you need to work on, what you want to get through, and all of that. I actually found myself in conversation with my astrologer. So as far as the broadcast is concerned, we tend to talk about everything under the sun metaphysical and what's happening on the East Coast and what's happening on the West Coast. And we also have our own personal journeys. And so for me, in this darkening of the season, as I go within, I started asking about what shifts and changes would occur that were sort of really significant, life altering. And this is what I love about astrology. If you don't have an astrologer, I know Katrina offers that as a service. You can go to crossroadsoccult.com. I also have a friend that works with astrology. Her name is Nikisha Rodriguez, and she's more of a cosmic herbalist. But then there's Astrology at Home with David Shipman and Kronos Astrology. So those are all great resources to get your charts done. I highly recommend them. But if you are getting on the astrological path or exploring astrology, looking at where Pluto, the planet Pluto, falls on your chart is a place where you will find transformation in your life. And, astrology, metaphysics, psychic instances, intuition, these things will all inform your life. They will be potential influences, but they do not mean the end all be all. It's like reading a book with unfinished chapters. You get to determine the ending. And so as I'm having a conversation with my astrologer, we were just, talking about general. He had mentioned coming across an instance where he had an individual's chart where their son was being approached by the planet Pluto. And I know this sounds difficult if you don't have astrology as a baseline knowledge, but all of the planets in our solar system have a meaning and an influence in our lives. And Pluto can be a lot about death and rebirth. And so in this conversation, he mentioned that Pluto was approaching this person's sun as its cycle chart. And it would be a point of choosing life or choosing death. And so with this instance, just to give the outcome, unfortunately, the person passed. And not from any sort of morose place. I found myself asking, like, wow, what does that look like for me personally? And I'm, for you all, if you're just wanting to check it out without getting involved with an astrologer, although I think that can be very helpful. There are websites that do it for free, like Cafe Astrology and astro.com. But see where Pluto ends up. So for me, I found myself in a conversation with my astrologer where he looked at my chart and he talked about how in 2011, my chart, that's where Pluto fell on my astrology chart, fell close to my sun. And in 2011, I was having a crisis of faith, and I actually was pretty heavily involved with ideation. And so, we have Katrina back. Hang on. Back on the stream.
As I was saying, Mercury retrograde.
Yes, and so I had tried to touch on that a little bit, and then segued into your stillness of the year. But I want to dive back into what you were finishing about Mercury retrograde.
So we are I'm broadcasting from my phone because for unknown reasons, my internet just totally went away, and I don't know what that's about. But yay, phone, here we are. And I tried a couple of different things, just hoping for a quick fix. Didn't get it. Can you hear me?
Yes, hear you loud and clear.
Thank goodness for Samsung. So this is to say that my experience with Mercury retrograde this time has all been technical. Everything with technology that could go wrong has gone wrong, right up to including this moment. And so, yeah, I use my internet here all the time, and it just decided to drop. So I have no clue what's up or why it's doing that. And so we'll just continue on with the idea that Mercury retrograde is having a little laugh. And the stillness. Yes, I have had the opportunity to enjoy some very quiet moments, which is unusual in my life. Mm-hmm. I'm blessed with a lot of clients and good business. We usually work around 50 to 60 hours a week, and also try to get the books written in the cracks of that. But lately I've had some very welcome still moments where I could just be quiet and be myself, not be the healer, not be the teacher, not be anybody's mom or anybody's wife. Nobody needed anything from me. I could just be still. And I had forgotten how much I valued that. And I look forward to creating more of that as the dark of the year comes.
Right. Creating, not waiting for it to magically arrive.
No, because you're not creating it. You're not doing it. You're not making it happen.
Within the I was just darkness, and within the stillness, I started having conversation with my astrologer to talk about Pluto, one of one of the darker planets in our astrological chart. And just to catch you up, Katrina, he was telling me how there was an individual he'd come across where the planet Pluto was cycling through their chart and getting closer to their sun, their solar sun. And in that instance, my astrologer had discussed how this was an instance where this individual could choose life or choose death. And unfortunately, it was that the person passed. And then I started asking those questions of him. I was like, well, you've got my chart, so let's, hey, what's going on? And he brought up 2011 was a time for me that that Pluto was close to my sun, and I was sharing that was a time when I was experiencing and engaging with suicidal. And so, death seemed like a much better option. And I can attest to, from a very far back vantage point, what I was going through probably was not that serious, but it was serious enough for me as like personal level. I was like, probably death is the only or the better option. Fortunately, I'm still here, so yay. And then I was going to fast forward to the next opportunity for that to occur is actually 20 years from now. And so does it mean, we talked about timing, we've talked about, shifts and changes, trauma, and this in 20 years from now, there seems to be another traumatic occurrence. It isn't that my astrologer is like, oh, well, you could die in 20. But I think that astrology offers us this great opportunity to ask ourselves, what do you want to do over this time? I think 20 years goes by very quickly. I know 4 years has. I know that I have an 11-year-old that I still feel like is 5. So that time passes, and I know within me it woke something up that said, I just don't want to waste any more time. And then of course I took a cat nap today, and I was like, it felt like a waste of time. But I was exhausted. But it brought this appreciation for life as a whole. If I only had, and I think we sort of ask these questions, right? If you only had, if you only had 5 more years to live, what would you do within that time? If you only had 10, 20, and I really feel like I have that on the my astrologer talked about this 20-year time frame being a shattering of my identity. I'm going to add you to this on the computer.
Hi, look at all of me. That was fun. Hi, my internet came back, and I couldn't hear you well, so I wanted to be able to hear you because I love listening to you.
Oh, well, and I've been talking at nauseum.
No, you've done good. I heard most of it. I heard most of it.
But the opportunity to look at your astrology chart, whether you're partnering with Katrina, partnering with, one of the free resources that I mentioned, or another astrologer that you trust, what are you going to do with this time? And like I said, I feel this sense of renewal, and I think I attributed this to the stillness of the year, to the darkness of the year, going within and saying, who do I want to spend more time with? What do I want to engage in? What do I want to learn? I've had books on my heart for the last 4 years. Fuck, I better get on the fucking ball. Um, and again, there's no, that's just the Virgo inner push. It's not like anybody's
I'm
hounding
having
me, but
a similar thing. And of course, big surprise. Mine is mostly because I'm old.
oh,
And you start to see how little time is left, and it gets absolutely stupefying that you could be so close to done. And I've always felt like I was, interestingly, did you get through out the number you did? I've always felt like I was going to live to be at least 100 years old. I felt like I was going to be an old lady. But my father died at 51. My mother died at 60. And about the second week in January of this coming January, I will have outlived her, and therefore outlived both of them. And I'm having an advance of age-related discomforts going on in my body. And then the fire taking away all of my memories, all of my heirlooms, everything that was related to me in any way, except myself and the few things we could drag out. The mortality has been very close. It's not comfortable. It's really a horrible feeling. And one of the concerns had always been, I have all of these things that are my belongings that are precious to me. They're not going to mean anything to anyone else. They're not going to mean anything to my kids. They sure don't currently mean much to Eric. He's tired of having to build sheds to put them in and lug them around, and bins and bins and bins and bins. I had over 1,000 books. I had so many books. And the concern was always, how do you keep your estate from being a burden? And now I'm in a place where I have almost nothing to pass on. And so it's one of those times that I fell into with the suicidal thoughts of, I might as well not even exist. What is the point? And the universe was very quick to show me through the healing classes and through the lives that we affect at Crossroads. This is the point. What was in your shed was not the point.
Right.
This is the point. But that has not taken away those feelings of mortality and feeling like I could die at any minute. When you're over 60, you get past that point of people making the squinch up face when you die. Because when you're in your 50s and you die, they go, "Ooh, gosh, they were so young."
Yeah.
When you're over 60, they're like, okay. Well then. And so nobody's shocked when you die in your 60s usually. And I need people to be shocked when I die. And I was always the young person in any group, in any room. I was the baby. And now, inevitably, I am the oldest person in the room unless I can get Colleen there, who's one of our frequent students. So it's tough to be the oldest one there. It's tough to be the one theoretically closest to death. And I don't like that feeling, even 20 years. And that's about what I felt. Well, I've probably got at least 20 years in me left.
Yeah.
Maybe 40. That seems like nothing. I feel like I've been awake for 5 or 6 years, 10 years. And like I wasted so much time not engaging, not plugging in, not connecting with the people around me in any kind of meaningful way.
Absolutely.
And I don't know. I wish I could get to people earlier and say, now begin having those connections. Now be a player in your own life.
Absolutely. There's a mass exodus happening in the job field as people are coming to these realizations. So I know I'm grateful to see the shift happening. However, let's continue that push. Don't get comfortable and complacent when things start to settle, because there will come a point in all of this madness when things settle. I'm not saying they're going back to the same, because they're not, but that settled feeling, are you still pursuing yourself? Are you still giving of yourself? Are you still receiving for yourself? Because at the end of your life, whenever that may be, what what did you leave behind? What are you taking? Just as Katrina said about the stuff. And it also was, I think what you were saying about the stuff is a great reminder of the accumulation of, again, learnings and certificate. Make sure that it's meaningful. It's not just stamped proof or approval. Nothing in life has to prove who you are. You can simply be yourself. But if you don't know who that is, then take that journey now to find out. I
Mhm.
can't tell you how many meetups I went to, how many classes I explored before I was like, wait a minute, all these things overlap, and I think I know who I am. It's not to say I won't take another class again, because if you're, again, teaching a class on making macaroni cards, I'm there. But it's about following your heart. It's the Fool card in the tarot. you know Take the chance, a calculated risk, and follow your heart. That's not to say, you know walk out of your six-figure job, but at least make it work for you. Don't work
Mhm.
for it until you can get into a better spot. So,
That was an interesting thing that a man said to my husband, gosh, probably 23, 24 years ago. So Eric was just a young buck back then, and he was in the comm squadron at McClellan Air Force Base. And they had a smoke pit where everybody went out to smoke. And he was out there with this older guy, and Eric was already talking about how he felt like, because he stepped into a ready-made family where there were so many kids, and the responsibility of raising a family at a very young age, an
oh
existing
wow.
family. And he was talking to this guy about that. He said, I feel like my time is just so taken up that I don't have any space for what I feel like I need to do. Because, and a lot of it is this job. He says it's not the family, it's this job, just having to come to this job all the time. And military, you're there for 12 hours a day, 13, 15 hours a day sometimes. And the guy looks at him, he said, you know what? This job, I'm not here for this job. This job is here for me.
Mm.
And that was a wonderful reminder that everything in our life is a tool. It's something to leverage us to an experience we want to have. And if your job makes you a lot of money, but it's getting in the way of allowing you to be who you are, you need to rethink that job. And one of the things I admire most about my husband is he is a phenomenal risk taker. And as a Virgo, that was terrifying to me. I thrive on security. I thrive on stability. And he would just walk into, a high paying job, and he would say, sorry, man, I this isn't doing it for me. I got a jam.
And then you'd be like, what the?
Right. We got all these kids. Stop doing this. Now don't worry, something else come along. And this on this one time, this man had not offended him in a way of an ego thing, but had disrespected him
Mm.
in a pretty inexcusable way. And Eric hit a stumbling block. He's like, you know what? I can't continue on this path with you when you have spoken to me like that. That's not acceptable. And the guy literally said to him, you won't walk away from this job. You're making too much money. And Eric's like, yeah, keep my money right here. See you later. And he was gone, and he got a wonderful job within a couple of weeks afterwards because he's very motivated, very well trained. And so it wasn't a scary time afterwards, but in the moment it was what what just happened. And he said, it was a critical point there. So sometimes we really do have to go eat, pray, love, and just say, I'm going to do this because this is what my spirit's calling me to do, and expect to be caught in some way.
And not from that, like, spirit's calling me. And I hear so many times people trying to use spirituality as like an escape, right? And it sounds like for Eric it was a bit of both, right? It was like a not an escape, but like a spirit's calling me, and these are clear red flags that
Mm-hmm.
cannot be addressed within myself. These are clear and evident external red flags. I am not being treated with human decency, and therefore I need to exit the situation, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to a lot of the situations I tend to hear more so involve that it is just not the ideal circumstance. It's not the
Right.
ideal job. It doesn't have all the
Mm-hmm.
bells and whistles that I would prefer. And maybe you're being positioned for those bells and whistles, but you have all this to deal with first. And so, I think there's a diverging path there as well, in
We
terms of
get
listening.
we get into that with relationships in a big way, where there's not really anything wrong with this relationship I'm in. This is a nice person. I enjoy being with them. But there are bells and whistles and benefits and feelings I know I'm supposed to be having that I'm not having. So, do you bail on a perfectly good friendship relationship or friendship love affair because there's an idea that you're going to be able to have the rocket's red glare with somebody else? It's a terrible place to be. And we also see the other extreme, you and I, all the time, of people who are in horrible relationships who just won't go, where the person is being psychologically abusive, or they're doing this or they're that, or they won't get a job, they won't take care of themselves, they won't shower, whatever it might be. And you start offering suggestions for a path out, and oh no, well, that would never, no, I can't do that because, I can't do that because, they start throwing up all the reasons why, and they're not going to leave that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how we get into these ruts of mediocrity, where we're unwilling to risk, to open our cup up to receive more. And the thing with those cups, if you don't keep pouring the stuff out of them, it's going to get swampy in there. And if you don't pour stuff out, you can't get more stuff in it.
Mediocrity is safe. At the end of the day, mediocrity isn't going to reject you. It's not going to disappoint you to the point where you can't function, And those are just lies that we tell ourselves, because on the back end of all of this, I think we talked about this in another show. What is it doing to your health? Are you going to be here long enough to enjoy what you've just endured?
Yep.
And is it worth it? Um, Touching on the astrological piece, what I was bringing to the table for those that want to look it up in your charts, or speak to an astrologer about it. You're looking for when Pluto squares your sun, when Pluto conjuncts your sun, or when Pluto opposes your sun. And these have to do with varying things. Like if Pluto is squaring your sun sign, it means that your life is going to get shaken up, and it can affect how you present yourself. And when Pluto conjuncts your sun, you have to face your inner darkness, which maybe a lot of people are going through right now and don't even realize it, because they're like, I don't know, fuck these planets. And they're just like, life is hard, and that's okay too. I mean, I think we should face our darkness and our shadows probably at least 4 or 5 times a year if we're focused. Or you could just let life come in with its lawnmower during Mercury retrograde and just, mow you down. When Pluto opposes your sun, there can be a struggle to safely express your who you are, and these can all fall in very complex ways across your chart. So I just wanted to throw that out there if you're doing the search by yourself, or if you are working with an astrologer, which I highly recommend because they can make, Mandarin English. So, um, any parting words on anything that we've said here, Katrina?
Well, not that we've said here, but something to bring into play, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in the coming weeks. That veil's getting thin, guys. There is a lot of spirit activity this year. Lots of people seeing things out of the corner of their eye that they thought were there and are not there that they can see. Lots of animal spirits around. So you see a black cat walk by and then there's no black cat. Lots of shadow work, lots of people that aren't corporeal being heard and seen. So it's a very busy spirit time. So just remember that you're sharing the world with them. You're not required to give them thirsty time or anything like that, but just let them be in their space as well, because it's going to get better. Mid-October, things will start to settle down a little bit, but we're in a very, very busy spirit time.
Real quick, and I know we're sort of at the end of the show here. Do you have any tips for protection if people don't feel comfortable engaging these energies?
I always use the No More Monster spray that we have. I don't mean to sound like an infomercial, but that
No?
is specifically to create distance between you and the spirit world, whether that's internal or external. And not drinking it, but the spirits inside or the spirits outside. And so I use the No More Monsters, putting it on the linens, because I tend to be more receptive at night.
Yeah.
Now, I'm one of these people that is just like, bring it. Come on, what you got? Hit me up. But for people that are really struggling, you just rain it down. Just take a bath with it. That helps. Florida water can help as well. But I prefer the sprays to create those shields. They seem to work out best. And yeah, again, remembering you're the living, they're the dead. You're in charge. You have more power than they do. And they don't necessarily have the right to blow you up communication wise if you're not wanting it. So definitely use some of the sacred sprays to create some space, carry the black rocks, and basically just let them know, look, I'm not your channel. I'm not your person. Go find somebody else. It's not me. That's not my job. It's not what I do.
We accidentally bumped into each other. Please move on.
Right. Or just set aside a time. Look, Friday at 4, I'm all yours. I'll sit down. I'll just listen for an hour. That's what you get. That's your appointment. Bring your friends. Don't care. But at 5:01, I'm out.
My office hours are between.
Right.
That's wonderful advice. Thank you for that. I know a lot of the folks that are, at least on my end, dealing with that sort of thing. If they want space, that's great advice for them to hear. So glad to have it. And I wouldn't necessarily change much. Actually, I wouldn't change anything at all. My only add would be something that I do periodically at the shop and for myself, which is a burning pot, which I've learned more recently is akin, very similar to doing fire limpias. And that is taking like a cast iron pot, something small. Actually, I have mine here. Okay, so something like this, lining it with foil, putting in Epsom salt, putting in alcohol, dropping in a match, and letting that fire kind of like a vortex suck in all the energy of the room. And then, I usually go for a refill of some kind. So that could be sprays or Palo Santo or, something that really, an incense, some beautiful energy would be my only add to Katrina's recommendations. If you're out there and you're like, fuck all this, I don't want to see it.
Spirits also are not real big on loud noises. They don't dig on that. So if you're just not feeling it and they're everywhere and you just can't do it, grab a couple of saucepans and start whacking them together and be like, y'all out. Out, go, gone. Time to leave.
Yeah, I had come across that with bells. Have you ever used bells?
Mm-hmm.
And one of my shamanic mentors would go around and just clap really loud to break up, just bam, 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 you know.
Banging the basalt rocks together too. The
Ooh.
smooth massage stones. Whack, 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 all the way through. Off you go.
Awesome. These are some great tips. So, we're at that point of the show again, guys. We've had an opportunity to talk about trauma as a guide rather than some oppressive force in your life. We've gotten to talk about the influx of healers. If you're in that wave, be encouraged. You're not the only one. And we are so excited to have you move forward, whether you're working with us, whether you're not. We are glad that you are picking up the mantle and carrying your piece of this wave. Um, we've gotten to talk about how timing is never going to be perfect. So bring your gifts into this world and into this space, because Mercury retrograde's happening. There's going to be disruptions. You're going to get into spaces that are hard. What better opportunity than to strengthen and sharpen your mind, your heart, your gifts, and your abilities? And then, amid all of this, tap into that stillness and see what it brings forward in you. You might find, like Katrina, that you love it. You might find, like me, that it gives you appreciation for life from a perspective of major change down the road. Or in the case of Katrina, major changes presently happening and still moving through. Whatever the case is, you know, acknowledge yourself. I think that's really like the biggest crux of all of this is, who are you? What are you? What are you bringing forward? How do you want to work with it? And you know then share that with the world, because I don't know, that just grounds things into reality, and that's so important. And at the end of the day, and at the end of your life, you'll be able to say, you know what, I enjoyed that. And if you're brave, you'll say, oh, I'm gonna do it again. And if you're me, you're gonna be like, um, so for now, we will end the show, and thank you again for joining us, being in our community. We love the audience participation. The comments were great. I know we didn't speak to many of them, but we saw you guys, we heard you guys, we felt you guys. And this has been amazing. We will see you next week. I do want to mention on October 25th, we will not be having a show because I need to step away that day. But we're going to miss you, and we will see you the following week. So that's October 25th. Again, we're going to take a small hiatus, one episode hiatus. But we hope that you've enjoyed everything. And as always, like, subscribe, continue to comment if you're catching the replay, and we'll catch you next time. We hope you all have a great night. Bye, everyone.
Bye.